As a kid, I always wanted to be a police officer. On my high school graduation photo, career goal is written police officer. It's, I think I was created, God created me to be that type of employment, in that type of employment. I enjoyed it very well.
Yeah, well, I joined because I had, I guess, the false perception that policemen here in Los Angeles, as opposed to Louisiana, where I grew up, were very professional police officers. Because I got a ticket, and they called me sir. In Louisiana, they didn't call you sir. They call you anything but sir, right? So I thought, hey, there's no bigotry. I'm going to join LA Police. I was naive.
I came on this job because it was a prestige position as far as I was concerned. I didn't know a whole lot about benefits, but I knew that I was going to make $454 a month. Wow, that was significant. That was significant.
It was a easy decision for me. I grew up with Los Angeles police officers, and my uncle joined the department in 1950, and ever since I can remember visiting with him and being around police officers. So I thought about it from the very beginning.
Several of us took the exam, and we became part of LAPD to make changes because I could see. I was stopped one night after I took some teenagers to a movie because they didn't have transportation, and I took them on the bus, and as I was walking home, I was stopped by a couple of police officers, and they treated me as if I was a criminal.
Oh, yeah.
And that really bothered me. And so I wanted to become a police officer so I could have an impact. And at every position that I worked in the 51 years that I was in law enforcement, that was my goal.
Let me take you back to the integration of the department. In 1961, the department made its official move to end the segregation in cars and what have you. And I think Bob and I probably were the only ones that were here in 61. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Right.
The cars on the outside were black and white. The people inside were not. That's how I place it.
As late as the 50s, black officers did not work with white officers. It wasn't until 61 that Bill Parker actually integrated the force and said, black and white officers can work in a black and white car. And then the first time I ever saw that was in about 61 when I was in high school, and I was at I'll never forget, the corner of Athens and Western, and I happened to look to my right and saw a black and white police car and a black and white police officer. I drove home and told my mother, you won't believe what I just saw on Adams and Western. But in 65, even though it was not a restriction, black officers still ended up, when they got off probation, wanted to work with another black officer.
After they desegregated, we did still change partners. It wasn't a problem because we could work in a car together, but there were some people you just couldn't work with. One of my training officers basically used the N-word very frequently. And then he would turn to me and say, this doesn't apply to you, you know.
So the thing is that, you know, and I talk to these young folk out here, is that sometimes you got to make a stand. Mm-hmm. And it may be uncomfortable, but you got to make a stand. Somebody made a stand for you to be here.
Right.
Well, see, the thing is, when you make a stand, you get killed.
So
let me tell you, when you make a stand, your career goes down.
Yeah.
But that's
what happens is this. I walked out of the back of 77th Station. I saw a black prisoner handcuffed in the back of a car and a white officer beating him with a flashlight. Mm-hmm. So I broke to the car, and my partner stopped me and told me to go tell the watch commander. I went and told the watch commander. I was working traffic. I got about 4 personnel complaints from AI officers, and I was only black on the PM watch in traffic. Then they conducted an investigation, and my partner, who saw the same thing I saw, supposedly didn't see anything. All right? I was ostracized by my division, and the captain calls me in and says, do you want to transfer out? No. So I went up and talked to my former captain that was at Wilshire. He was a commander at the time. And I said, I'm having a lot of problems in traffic. So he says, okay, I'll call your captain and I'll talk to him. Nothing happened.
So we went through all kind of embarrassing things. And actually, segregation was a very inefficient way to run an organization.
Thank you.
You know?
When I graduated from LAPD in '65, we started with a class of 85 people. Only 5 of them were black, and I think only 3 graduated. And the first real startling view was when you went to your graduation and you looked from your seat up on the podium. There was nothing up there that was black other than shoes. And there were no Hispanics. And it was clear this was a department of Caucasian males, because they didn't even have women going through the academy with you. They went through a policewoman's class. And it wasn't until the 80s that police women became police officers.
I felt that being black and female was inseparable, mainly because law enforcement, LAPD, was a quote unquote man's world. And so being female and black was a double ticket. You know, you didn't have one without the other in terms of how you were viewed. And, you know, even folks would say, oh, well, you get 2 check marks. Well, I'll take them. But it wasn't inseparable.
And sometimes it counted against you twice.
Yes.
Almost, because it's one thing to be African American and then to be a woman, because you can be an African American man and you can still rise to heights that women couldn't. And so in that sense, they are different.
Well, a lot of it too, like what you said, Van, I remember when I was a probationer and an officer asked me, oh, it says, you know, what you went to college and blah, blah, and it says, well, what rank do you hope to get to? And so I said, I don't know, maybe commander. Commander? Do you know you're black? And I'm thinking, yes. Do you know you're a female? I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, like, really, it's been that, but over the years, you know what that means now.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I was thinking.
Yeah, and then sometimes you have it's a double sword, because you might want to go to a unit or you want to get promoted to a certain rank, and they'll say, hey, we already have a black. And then you will think, okay, woman, and then we already have 4 women in there. So it's not inseparable, but at the same time, sometimes it checks the box for you not to promote or move forward. But I will say this, being female black, there wasn't a level above us. You know, so almost everywhere you went, almost everything you did, you were the first. You were making it, you know.
And it was funny because in the 131-year history of the LAPD, it was 4 black female lieutenants. It was me, you, Ann, and Anita.
One of the very first experience I had, I was a young police officer in Southeast Division. And I work with my male white partner. And he made a statement to me that women should not be police officers. And that was an eye-opening experience. And women should never promote, or at least not promote anytime sooner than 10 or 15 years as a police officer. And again, that opened my eyes because if anything, it encouraged me to pursue advancing in the department more and to recruit as many women as possible. Because you got to understand, when I came on in 1984, there still weren't a whole lot of women in the department. Law enforcement is a male-dominated profession. And at the time, it was primarily white. Let's accept it.
Well, you never get to exhale because you always feel like you have to work 5 times as hard, because when you make it, there's always this assumption that you made it because of something other than your intellect, your experience. So you're excited when you get the promotion, whatever the promotion is, and then it's just always watching your back because I cannot afford to mess up, because you know you also bear the weight of your gender and your blackness. Because if I mess up, there won't be anyone else. They'll say, see, that's why we didn't make any of them for so long. So you have the weight of that. I remember, even though I did have Regina when I made commander, so we were across the way and she was always supported, and she always would say, remember, you can't do what they do.
And she's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we get a jacket because we do just what you said, where we watch our backs and we want to make sure we do everything right and everything better than somebody else. Then we get a jacket for being by the book. Yeah. She's inflexible. We have to be by the book. Yeah, she's too hard. We have to be by the book, because if we falter in any way, then they'll say, see, I knew she couldn't do it.
But for Ann, it had to be really hard because you were in rooms for it took 10 years or 8 years before they promoted another African-American female captain.
Right.
And you were in rooms at tables all by yourself. And you didn't look like anyone else. And I every time we see you, we praise you for not giving up, dodging all those bullets and taking all the wounds for us, and making sure that, and doing the job, so making sure for us to be able to do it. But that's a long time, 8 years to be there in the room by yourself.
Right.
Well, it was a lonely time because during that time I was trying to learn my job, stay true to myself. I felt a separation because I was in that room by myself all the time, sometimes being ignored. That movie that came out a few years ago, Hidden Figures, I was one of those hidden figures. They would come in, I'm at a table all by myself, but then I said, you know what, this is how it's going to be. So I would always bring work with me. You all don't have to talk to me anyway. I'm a work. I'd always bring something to do, because I didn't want them to know that it was affecting me, because it was quite lonely, you know, very difficult.
We talk about the blacks and other minorities promoting up the ranks, which open up positions. But I think equally as important, 2 black organizations formed. One was OJB, and the other one is ABLE, Association of Black Law Enforcement Executives. And OJB, by the way, is the Oscar Joe Bryant Association, which is named after what we at the time thought was the first black officer killed in the line of duty. And ABLE was the Association of Black Law Enforcement Executives, and we were beginning to get people on the department that were above the rank of lieutenant and above. And they were getting positions that helped them understand the entire department a lot better, and doing through the networking and training, we're able to pass that on to help others understand and promote.
And we were at a meeting years ago, and Daryl Gates said something like, why do you have to have a black police association? And because he said, because white officers have one of their own. And he said, what's that? And he said, it's called LAPD.
It seems like being Black or African American and on this department, we have no redemption day. You know what I mean by that? We don't have a redemption time when something happens. We're not able to move through the department and continue to grow and develop if something happens, no matter what that something is. It's like it's going to be a mark on you where you don't get to progress like others do.
An alternate method is to drop the suspect to the ground, engaging the vulnerable bend of his elbow with the right knee. Then bring the left knee in to complete the restraint, leaving the hands free to carry on the handcuffing operation.
I worked internal affairs, and I saw things in internal affairs that captains covered up.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah. I had an incident where an officer in 77 shot at a kid. His mother let him drive another friend over home. He was coming back. He was stopped by 77 officers. They ran the car and everything and released him. And as they released him, they shot several times at the car. The officers that was assigned to the area denied it. We pulled a tape, and one of them was a Southerner. And we played the tape. He said, "That's my voice, but I didn't say that."
Or Trump.
That takes care of that.
He went back.
Trump's time.
Yeah. The captain exonerated him on the basis that the officer denied it.
In the 60s, on Broadway, I think it's 54th Street, where the Muslim temples was, and the police, LAPD and the Motors guys used to go down there and just beat the hell out the Muslims. And so, you know, I saw some of that, and I said, man, that is not right, that is wrong.
There's officers, the people that's on this department should not be police officers. They don't have the attitude for it. They don't have the respect for it, the badge and the uniform they wear.
Think of the police department as an apple tree. We got a few bad apples. Doesn't make the whole tree bad.
The key is, how do you eliminate them from joining the department?
When I think about recruitment in my time with LAPD, and I recruited all races, we want the most qualified person. I think about what can we do to expose non-African Americans, particularly if you're going to work in a Black community, to the Black lifestyle. You know, should we have them live with African American family for a month? You know, when we do our background check, do we check to find out if they have any friends of color? You know, all these kind of things went across my mind doing this. How do we make law enforcement better? Because overall, it has been a great career. It really has, but there are some areas that need to be improved, so.
There are more good officers than bad officers. With his knee on Floyd's neck, I took that personal. Because I'm sitting there and I'm saying, get your ass up. I'm sorry for the camera. I said, get your... And I'm thinking to myself, what are you doing? And I'm thinking, the world is watching this, and all they can think is this is what all police officers do. We're police officers, and that's not what we do. We have worked very hard. I have worked very hard in my 34 years to build bridges between the police department and the community, both as law enforcement officers, both with our involvement in the organizations that we have been involved with and been on the boards of. And it took this one idiot to just tear all that down to where we've got to start over and rebuild. It takes one bad officer to make all the good ones look bad.
Why in the world did they have a guy that had 18 personnel complaints as a training officer? That would never happen here in Los Angeles. He shouldn't even been on the job, let alone working with people. I feel sorry for those two guys are 2 days out of the academy and they're working with this individual with that kind of personnel history. I don't understand that.
But with George Floyd, the first call was an investigative call. You were Detective Connie. All they had to do was take a report.
Yep.
Right.
Who handles counterfeit money, Connie?
Secret Service.
Secret Service. Them boys didn't have no expertise in counterfeit money. You take a report. George Floyd was there, get us the information.
You book the money.
You book the money, give it to the detectives. They will coordinate with the Secret Service the next business day, and they may have an investigation going that you don't know anything about.
That's true.
You see, that wasn't done.
To have a riot on the state capitol, those were crimes.
January 6th.
January 6th. And then when you have police officers, how can you serve the community if you support this type of behavior? Not that you can't be a Republican or Democrat, but if you support violence and you're gonna come back in the community and serve this community, you can't. I don't see, that's impossible.
That's what I was talking about. That's not the type that should be police officers.
Right.
Yeah. They had slave patrols. You ran from the plantation, they caught you, they beat you, or send you back to the plantation, or they caught you, beat you, and killed you.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? They're doing the same thing today.
Yeah.
You run, they catch you, they beat you, they're sending you to jail, or they catch you, beat you, or as we see, you may get shot. And the thing is that there is so much stuff that you don't know about.
Right.
That you will never hear about.
Right.
That I see come across my desk nationwide. And I don't even have a tip of the iceberg. I can't handle all this stuff.
People are treated like human beings because they are human beings, they're citizens, and they deserve respect. And if a police officer is not doing that, he should not be on a job.
The black cop is the man in the middle. He seeks acceptance in the police community, which reflects the white society and the status quo. On the other hand, he's a black man from a black community, which is demanding change, a community which continues to ask him, which side is he on?
So I was having a little trouble with this one particular detective. So now I'm up, I'm writing the warrant. We serve the warrant. And if you know anything about warrants, you kind of go in and you're searching and the house is a mess afterwards and all that. In the back room, there were these kids. They were working on their homework. They're back there trying to read and all the noise that we're making in the house. So after the house was searched, I went to the back room and I'm holding school back there with these kids. A prior teacher, I'm going over their English, one has social studies. So this one little boy, he's like, oh, I got calculus. I said, it's been 100 years since I've had calculus. So I go out to the front of the house, and all the detectives are out there. And they're like, Ann, what's taking you so long? Come on, let's go. It's done. We got what we want. Hurry up. I said, I need somebody that's good in math. Who's good in math? So the one guy that I was having trouble with says, I'm good with math. What do you have, Ann? I said, come on. So I'm dragging him to the back of the house. So his whole expression changed. There was a softness that came over him, and he sat down with this little boy. you know, and he just completely changed. He says, Ann, well, he called me Annie. Annie, wow, that felt good.
The department itself is more concerned about the infrastructure and who can be promoted, and the community is secondary. And when I worked community relations at Southwest, I went to the business community, the gas stations, liquor stores. We got banners and we put on the fields in the parks showing that certain liquor stores and certain gas stations bought their uniforms. Now, what that did, it also let the kids know I'm not gonna break into his business because he's supporting me. At the same time, the gang members had taken over the parks. But the gang members saw that their brothers were playing the sports and we were supporting them. They moved out of the parks, cleaned up the parks, okay? What happened is that I got kicked out of the unit overnight. Why?
Because you were effective?
Because I was effective.
Yeah.
Okay, it was a year later that a white captain came to me and told me why I was kicked out of the unit, because they didn't give me a reason. Rodney King came out, and I was a valuable tool then to help quiet the community. I said, wow, and he told me, your type of policing, the department didn't want your type of policing, but it's your time now to do that type of policing. If you had continued doing that type of policing, how could we get grants from the government? How could we get new police cars? You know, but that's real.
We sometimes get set in our old ways of doing things. And so I think one of the things that with including improvement of race relations kind of thing, with the different ethnicities that are flooding into this country, we're always gonna have a cultural issue that we're gonna have to learn how to deal with. So I think that one of the things that we can do, whether it's Black, whether it's Asian, or whether it's Middle Easterner, we need to be a little more forward thinking in dealing with the cultural issues in the community and how we go about our day-to-day business. Because what was good 15 years ago may not be appropriate today.
We mentioned the fact that some of you, probably all of you, heard that word N-word a lot. Well, we all did. And I suppose someone would say, well, why would you tolerate that? Why wouldn't you just leave? But if everyone had taken that attitude and left, they wouldn't be here today. And the progress that we have on the LAPD now, and even in other law enforcement entities, would not be there. In those days, if you were a minority officer, a Black officer, the person that you was working with, a white officer, he could simply write down a few notes or something about your attitude and the fact that you didn't do this or didn't do that, and all of a sudden you're terminated. So that's something that it's a reality that you don't hear that much about, that was really a part of everyone here being where they are now.
Good point. You know, I'm going to make a point of pointing out some things to the people that you see sitting here. And I like to start with Don over there, Don Farrell. You know,
Said thanks a lot. Huh?
He said he left the LAPD as a lieutenant, but he wasn't able to go on to the fact that he went into, as an attorney, went into the city attorney's office. Then he ultimately retired here a couple of years, 3 years ago, as a Superior Court judge. So he started as a young recruit in this organization, but look at him now. and the same thing about Ron here. You know, Ron talked about him being assistant chief when he retired, but he wasn't able to tell you that he was the chief of police of the city of Inglewood. And Ron, if I'm missing anything else, help me with that.
8 years.
8 years, there you go. And Lou, his golf game is getting better all the time.
And you might recall that I stayed the longest of anybody here. And so when I left, I went to the golf course.
You can't beat it.
And talked my son into coming on the job.
And I like to talk about my big money friend over here, Assistant Chief, J.I. Davis. You know, he wasn't able to tell you that he went to Inglewood as a chief of police. He worked on the Compton, what was that again?
Well, it was an advisory group to look at whether or not they should reform their police department.
Yeah, so he worked on a task force with a name you'll hear one day if you haven't heard it, Joe Roseanne. But anyhow, G.I. has certainly performed outstandingly in his position. You know, Bob spent, I guess, the least amount of time on the department that of any of us, 22 and a half, something like that. But he didn't tell you that he would sit on the Board of Prison Terms and decided who was going to be released and who was going to be held, you know, for the horrible crimes that they committed. My golf game was nowhere near Lou's.